is an intelligence expert, MSNBC contributor, and New York Times bestselling author on the plot to betray America, how Team Trump embraced our enemies, compromised our security, and how we can fix it. He's here with me today to discuss the breaking news. All week, we've had nonstop news. Hi, Malcolm.
Hi, Olga.
How
How
are
are
you? Good. So,
you?
where do we begin?
Well, yeah, I get sleep. The funny thing is, I get up very, very early in the morning, to write and get focused before my regular day starts. And, I guess Trump tweeted around 1:30 in the morning that he had coronavirus. He and Melania both tested positive. And we had heard the previous evening that Hope Hicks had tested positive. So if Hope Hicks tested positive, she was exposing everyone in the White House staff to that for as far back as last Saturday. They estimate would have been when she would have gotten it, and she would have been asymptomatic and spreading it all the way through Wednesday. So yeah. Well, first off, while everyone is out doing their happy dance in the end zone,
Mhm.
and all the hundreds and hundreds of tweets this morning about Karma being a very, very precise sniper uh, and a genocide there potentially, um, that that the national security implications of this are severe. The president of the United States may soon become incapacitated.
Mhm.
Mike Pence is saying today that he popped negative, that he got a negative. But as we know, a lot of these quick tests kind of have upwards to 50% negatives, and they were testing all of that time, which means that many of those tests would have been negatives. And we're pretty sure that he probably had a blood test or a nasal swab test, most likely blood, when Hope Hicks popped positive, and they ran it over to Bethesda and got a clean readout that he really does have coronavirus, because this doesn't benefit him at all. Let's just be honest about that.
No, it
Donald
doesn't.
Trump with coronavirus, the markets have already taken a dip. If he gets sick, I know this morning a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a grand scheme for Trump to fake us all out. Believe me, this is not a grand scheme where we need Donald Trump to pretend like he has coronavirus and come back Jesus-like or Lazarus-like, right? Rising from the illness to show that he is super Trump. This is a
with
man who
with
has.
his hydrochloroquine and his Clorox
Well, I
vaccine.
mean, Tiffany Cross was just tweeting that. She was saying, "I thought he was on hydrochloroquine, right? I mean, it's just you said that this is what was preventing him from getting coronavirus, which just goes to show he wasn't really exposed to coronavirus before. He's been in an iron bubble, an airtight bubble, and now, the woman who literally, you know." irons his pants, starches his pants on her knees in Air Force One, Hope Hicks, who is face to face with him all the time. And he is not a believer. Well, now he may, like Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, who got coronavirus, still acts like he doesn't believe it's real. When you're a cultist, right, a true believer, if it doesn't spring forth from your own mind that it has some positive or negative benefits, you will continue to deny what we can all see with our own eyes.
Yeah, the same happened with Bolsonaro. I mean, he was running
Oh,
around anti-COVID, no mask. And it's amazing because it's all the fascists in the world who are the anti-COVID deniers, who are gathering crowds together, who refuse to, provide PPE for the healthcare workers. And the three of them end up getting COVID. Meanwhile, our Western allies and the leaders of those countries, I mean, they're perfectly, they're fine. They take all the precautions. They make sure that people around them are safe. And
right.
from what I was hearing on the news, the White House, I mean, everyone's walking around in and out, no mask. They take a test in the morning, which is like, has a 30% false negative rate. And I mean, what do we expect? You know?
Yep.
And what do you think as far as on the international front? Because I'm sure that Vladimir Putin was up at night listening to these news, and North Korea and Iran and China. I mean, what happens on that front?
Well, I just want to okay. First off, when it was announced that Hope Hicks had tested positive, you know, I'm certain because it would have been about what 7:30, 8 in the morning. So Putin would have been having breakfast in the Kremlin at that time. And here's how I envisage Putin. Right, he's sitting there. The director of MSN comes up and goes, "Hey, Trump just tweeted that he's positive," and Putin just goes, "Man, he's just like,
Yes,
what an effing idiot." Gotcha.
yes,
I
from
mean,
his bunker, because he keeps himself in the bubble.
Putin's like, what's for
While
breakfast?
Russia's
I'm sure he's having a national security. He had a national security council meeting this morning, Putin, in order to take economic advantage over this. I mean, Putin is not an idiot. He's an ex-KGB officer. He probably knew beforehand. One of the things that you can do is monitor, before Trump puts out a tweet, is monitor the level of activity, the electromagnetic activity around the White House. And even though the White House is tempest controlled in some respects, that's where, radio signals cannot be detected outside the White House. We
yeah.
know that this White House is full of idiots. Okay. And as idiots, they don't follow any of the rules. And so people would be stepping outside onto the balcony to go, Donald Trump's popping a positive, right? And so what you see is, if you're at the Russian embassy up on Wisconsin Avenue, which has what we call an oversight, an electronic overview of the entire city of Washington, D.C., and with sub places, sub collection sites around the city, you can see whether there's the regular radio chatter. Hope Hicks gets coronavirus a little bit up and then down. And then at midnight, everyone's mobile phones are doing this. And it's a ginormous spike of radio electric activity. You're like, something's going on over at the White House, right? And you just go, 1 and 1 is 2. Hope Hicks pops a positive. Huge spike of electromagnetic activity and cell phone, massive cell phone activity. Lots of cell phone activity between Bethesda, Naval Hospital, or what Walter Reed National Medical Center now, and the White House is like, I can see there's a Russian tech sitting around going, Donald Trump's popped a positive, and the Kremlin would know that in 5 minutes. What's that? Yeah, it's like, boss. I'm going to be sick for a couple of weeks. I can't come into work. So, I find this interesting. Michelle on the text said that we're supposed to be journalists. Michelle, I just want to let you know, I am not a journalist. I'm an ex-spy. Okay, I just happen to be a New York Times best-selling 4 times author, including the book that Donald Trump claims was the last book he read before the election, Defeating ISIS. So no, I am not a journalist. I am a commentator and a spy. So,
And I definitely am not a journalist. I am a researcher, and I actually hang.
Researcher. Big
Yes.
difference between being an author and a journalist, because, and this is why, Michelle, this is why I was the first person in U.S. media to identify the Trump-Russia scandal as a foreign hostile intelligence operation because I wasn't a journalist. And as you recall, I wrote my book in 5 weeks, The Plot to Hack America, that came out 6 weeks before the election. And I was on television for almost 2 months as the only person saying this is an intelligence operation designed to get Trump elected president. The next book,
You were sounding the alarm. You couldn't have
right?
screamed any higher. I
The next
remember
book,
you were like, "We're under attack. We're under attack."
right?
Like we.
The next book to come out was Luke Harding's 16 months later. He's a journalist. Journalists are slow. The
Yes.
first American book to come out that someone described as a long, slow version of The Plot to Hack America was David Corn and David Ignatius's book, which came out 24 months after Plot to Hack America. So this is why intelligence professionals like myself and researchers like Olga, we can be far ahead of the game because we can't be manipulated the way that journalists are manipulated. Journalists were completely manipulated by a foreign power by putting the shiny dangly Hillary Clinton thing out in front of them.
I know the emails.
Intelligence professional, I don't see that stuff. I see KGB activity behind this. This is old school spy stuff. I see it. I see it hack. So who was right in the end? I was.
Yes. After how much pushback? I mean, for
Oh my
years
God!
it was forgotten.
For
But
4 years, and maybe it's because I was a black man. If I was a journalist, but for 4 years I was called a conspiracy theorist, and
yes.
that all of my Trump, Russia. I mean, there were some people out there who were spouting conspiracy theories. Crazy, what's your name, Lois Mensch, and
Oh yeah.
some of these other guys like Seth Abramson said he knows Trump has a signed contract with Putin to betray America.
Oh come on. Like
No,
someone put that in writing.
I wrote an entire book about how foreign intelligence officers and foreign human intelligence officers manipulate people. They don't have to do that. There's an entire methodology that it is used. If you don't know that, please visit the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., where I'm on the board. You can go there and learn about these things to where you don't have to be present. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is know your target's psychological makeup and then place the proper parameters around that person and manipulate that person to being first your useful idiot, then your unwitting asset. Then on July 27, 2016, when Trump said, Russia, if you're listening, that's when Trump was well aware that Russia was working in his interest and he started working in their interest. That's called a witting asset. I've never said he's been a Russian agent. An agent is a person who signs a contract. That's ridiculous. I mean, no one's a Russian agent. Trump just doesn't know. Just either he knows and is playing the role, or he has been so phenomenally manipulated that Russia just created a pair of rose-colored glasses and put it on his eyes, and he thinks he created those glasses, and that worldview is his worldview, when in fact it is entire intelligence community who, from a former KGB human intelligence officer who got people to commit treason all the time.
Yes.
Donald Trump thinks it's his. It's actually a process that's been put around him, and it's a very common process. So
Very, especially and then there's the money. I mean,
well,
follow
money
the
is
money, like they
always
always say. Speaking of money, so his taxes, New York Times dropped the bombshell of getting his tax returns after several committees and sending lots and lots and lots of letters and all the court cases going to Supreme Court and back and whatever. New York Times gets their hands on 2 decades of taxes and we haven't fully seen line by line, but it did come out that he owes over $400 million in the next 2 years that is due.
For,
Now,
for
how
4 years,
dangerous?
hold on, for 4 years, the number that was floating around in the general media that I quoted in all three of my books was $440 million in debt to Russian oligarchs. And suddenly, the New York Times, I suspect the New York Times is being conservative and pulling their punches. But it just happens to come out 20 million below the estimate that virtually every other investigator before came out. So that means there is, in my world, you have context and precedence, right?
Mhm.
Context is the box that right? Well, in this case, there's a lot of precedents. People, I mean, Craig Unger, right, in his book, came out and said the same thing. Trump phenomenally in debt to the Russians. David Corn had been saying that for a long time. David K. Johnson has been saying that for almost a decade. So we know this, but it's Tim O'Brien, the editor in chief at Bloomberg, who wrote the book Trump Nation, the only person to ever sue Trump, the only person to ever get Trump's tax returns released, 2 years of them. He said it's well over $1 billion, and the New York Times has likely just gone with the very easy ones that they could see.
Yep. And now what happens with that? So if he does owe the oligarchs, which essentially is Putin, how big of a national security risk is that to our country to have a president who is
Phenomenal.
owned basically?
It's a phenomenal risk. It means the president of the United States is literally owned lock, stock, and barrel by foreign oligarchs, by a foreign government. Those oligarchs cannot be oligarchs unless the KGB officer in chief allows him to be there. So, allows them to be oligarchs. This means a foreign power may literally own the president of the United States via cash. And, I've been saying this for 4 years. Olga can attest to this. Again, every word of what I have been saying and what we have all found proven true has been called conspiracy theorists by the Trump people, by the extreme liberal left, the Glenn Greenwalds and the Matt Taibbi's and all these pro-Assange, pro-Snowden guys. That this is
Follow
some
the money?
crazy liberal conspiracy theory. Every intelligence report out there, every government investigation has come up with that there is something there, that Donald Trump has a debt of some sort to Vladimir Putin, and that Vladimir Putin has managed to manipulate that to Russia's benefit. So, I often get this question, why would he do this? And I got into it with Masha Gessen over this at one point. She's Putin's biographer. And, she sees things from a Russian perspective. I don't see things from a Russian perspective. I see things from a spy's perspective. And, my perspective is you don't do this stuff unless you have a goal. And your goal isn't, let's just make the United States feel crazy and have chaos. No, that's not a goal. That's an effect. What we're talking about here is, what is the end state? What makes Russia great again? When the United States is torn down. But what aspect of the United States impacts the greater Russian Federation to the point where they go reach back into the Soviet Union for the exact goal that the Soviet communists wanted, which was the dissolution of liberal democracy in Western Europe and the United States, the breakup of the Atlantic Alliance, the withdrawal of the United States from the world. That was the Soviet Union's goal for the West. Well, You got an ex-communist KGB officer in charge. And the only difference between Vladimir Putin, who lived in Dresden, and I've been to his office in Dresden, okay? That's an interesting place. An office where every door frame and every window frame had microphones in it. I met the woman. It's now a philosophical society because it was taken away from them by the KGB in the 40s. But I met the East German woman who was there on day one handover, and they had to go through with crowbars and pull the microphones out of the wood. This is the environment Vladimir Putin lived in. The purpose of it was to give him to let him know that the party is always watching. He was a loyal communist in the KGB.
Yes, and that's how the Soviet Union was. I mean, my parents lived under that. Any place you step into is wired. They can listen to you. They are watching you. I mean, the whole Soviet Union, especially St. Petersburg, Moscow, or all the main areas, they were wired that they can actually, they could listen to every single thing you're doing. And God forbid if they suspected you had a meeting or if you were displeased with the communist government,
I get these right wingers and these extremist left wingers. I call them libertarian left because they really come around to the right. They're really almost uber conservatives, right? The Green Party. And they're all like, Putin wasn't a communist. Yes, Putin was a communist.
Of course he was a communist.
A KGB officer in the 1980s without proving through childhood in the Komsomolets or proving in university at Leningrad University that you were not a hardcore party apparatchik.
Absolutely.
Why would you lie about that to join the most evil organization on earth? You gotta love that organization to join that. So a very interesting world that Vladimir Putin came from. And now it impacts everything that we do in the United States. Olga, you still with us? Well, while Olga is unfreezing herself, what I'll do is I'll just expound a little more on the question that she asked. The other components of the national security implications of this are that our enemies now see us as weak and vulnerable. Let me tell you something. If Donald Trump were to remain as president, we would become the sickest nation on this planet. The sickest nation on this planet. We would, because of the way that people are just ignoring the virus, we would have a continuum of sickness for years, because it would be years for everyone to get a working vaccine. So imagine every country in the world going out and economically betting that the United States will be weaker, sicker. People would take away, divest from the United States, or would hold their cash until Americans couldn't afford to maintain businesses or highways or whatever, and then buy this country whole. All right? We need a healthy country, a strong country. And then again, foreigners would also be buying the assets which would make this country healthy. Big pharma. You could just imagine Saudi Arabia just going in and buying Pfizer, or a GlaxoSmithKline as the virus, the vaccine comes up. Also would beat us on the global market for, people ask me all the time, well, maybe these guys will slow drag a vaccine. No, they won't slow drag a vaccine, because you're talking a question of making hundreds of billions of dollars or tens of trillions of dollars in creating a proper vaccine for this. They're going to go after the tens of trillions of dollars. And so, it is in their interest to get a vaccine up soon. But you know what? As the United States becomes sicker, people will become more desperate. And desperate means they will pay any price to be able to travel around the world, to be immune, and to do business in the other part of the world, the other 95% of the world that we are now literally shut out of. All right. So we've lost Olga again. So I'm going to answer some of the questions that were brought up. Somebody said, do you think Trump has China, Saudi Arabia debts? I believe he probably has Saudi Arabian debts. We already saw he's an interesting character. I worked in the Middle East my whole career, and the one thing that you need to know about the Gulf Arab states is they understand money and they understand transactional politics. Like right now, they are in the process of selling the West Bank to the Israelis in exchange for security guarantees against Iran. I mean, this is 80 years of the Palestinian question is going to be sold literally down the river. And the Palestinians don't get a word to say about it. But Israel will get open relations with the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Bahraini, all of these things as a hedge against
absolutely.
Iran. But you know how you do it? By Jared Kushner. And my chapter on Trump's foreign policy is called, in Plot to Betray America, is called Buy a Man and You Buy America. You buy Donald Trump and then you get the United States with him. So this never happened before. There was never a president of the United States where you could go, "Hey man, I'm gonna give you $100 million, and I need you to show some consideration on the Arab-Israeli. You need to give us some flexibility with putting genociding people in Yemen." And they would go, "No, are you kidding? We're here for freedom and human rights." So Donald Trump, on the other hand, he'll sell you in a minute, and we have already seen that we now have learned that he covered for the murder of Khashoggi. Literally, but the question is, what did it cost? Will suddenly Donald Trump, $500 million in debt, disappear and vanish from a Canadian shell company that's owned by a company in Cyprus that is ultimately owned by the king of Saudi Arabia? Who knows? But it's very possible.
Yes, and that definitely leaves us in a very vulnerable. The more divide there is, the more rejoice, and election, Russia, that our intelligence are attacking our elections. A faceted attack with white supremacy. Facebook page launching Facebook. So division, planned protest and between the Biden, everything happening. I mean, we are watching. We are on, and our
He's absolutely right about that. Israel owns the West Bank. They are annexing the West Bank, and the Arab states are now giving them permission for that as a solution to the Arab-Israeli problem. And the actual proposal on the table is that what Israel would prefer is the entirety of the West Bank, as it says in their belief system, is that it would be from the ocean to the River Jordan, right up to Jordan. That would require them to take the West Bank. And they want to turn Palestine into a sort of rump, non-stateless state that would be comprised of Gaza and small strip of the Sinai Peninsula. But you would have to literally wipe away all Palestinians in the West Bank. That would be very interesting. So U.S. foreign policy now, if Joe Biden wins, will turn on its head. And we'll have to confront this worldview that Trump has put in there. So Olga's last question, which was piecemeal, was about the Russians' impact on the elections and the intersectionality with them and white supremacists. I wrote about this in my book Plot to Destroy Democracy, which, if you haven't read that is the first book you should read, because that is about Russia's intelligence services and how historically they would attack the United States, and how Putin would put together the plan to destroy Western, liberal Western democracy. And believe it or not, we're last. He has already taken over whole countries in Europe in the belief that liberal democracy has failed, and oligarchy and Russian dictatorship has advanced, and is the way it should be, a sort of East Eurasian fascism, so to speak. But what's funny about that is, and I wrote about this in Plot to Destroy Democracy, there is a huge intersection between the neo-Nazis and the Russians. The head of or David Duke, leader of the Ku Klux Klan, has an apartment in Moscow. Richard Spencer, the head of the American neo-Nazis, his wife is a Ukrainian, pro-Moscow Ukrainian, who was a translator for Alexander Dugin, Putin's ideological philosopher that the West should be done away with or should be turned into vassal states, and that the world's axis should be Moscow to a pro-fascist United States to a pro-Russian, pro-fascist Western Europe, and they would be an axis against China. I mean, that's Alexander Dugin. And the head of the Nazis in the United States, his wife is the translator for that guy. Okay?
And Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon. Oh my God. Steve Bannon is so pro-Moscow. I actually put him under the chapter called Putin's Philosophers. He views Alexander Dugin as this sort of like patron saint of how it should be in terms of destroying liberal democracy and all liberalism in the world, and that strongman dictators should rule this place. I mean, it's a horrible place ideologically out there. And because we have not really identified this in the way that Soviet communism was a mortal threat, because these people are rich. They live in a world where flags and loyalty don't mean anything. Only money means something to them.
Yes.
And Donald Trump wants to be in that world.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And what do you think now going forward? What do you think are going to be? Because we had the debates. Trump clearly came to the debates not to gain a voter. He's not interested in gaining voters. He came to the debates to basically bulldoze democracy, bulldoze our norms, and on the world stage, while the whole world is watching. I mean, he humiliated America. So clearly, and on top of it, supported white supremacists, and told us basically we're not going to have fair and free elections. So what do you think now going forward towards election, and now with this new twist of Trump having COVID, what happens to our elections? Like between now and we're like almost a little bit over a month away.
I think I don't think anything big will happen in this election cycle. What I do think is that there is a chance that Trump getting COVID will now impact his base in such a way that they'll be discouraged, because the man has pathologically lied about this. Oh, by the way, we got a comment with somebody saying this is a very strange stream. Yes, it is. Yes, this is a very strange stream.
This is a very strange timeline, unfortunately, we've been thrown into the past 5 years. No, it is.
Yes. And the funny thing is the guy Stump Lover says, does anyone respond to the comments? Responding to the comments right now. But it's strange, because what you're seeing is you're getting true national security implications of the things that a lot of people don't think about. These incidents, like Trump getting coronavirus, is fused together with his followers' belief that it doesn't exist.
Yes.
I mean, I've literally seen people go out and say that this isn't real. And then we hear an audio recording of him in March and February admitting it was not only real, it was lethal and
I
mortal
know.
to people. And then he gets
That
on
should be.
television and for 6 months lies to the American people every day. And now karma has bit him in the butt. And the problem is, this could incapacitate him. That makes us vulnerable to our enemies. It makes us financially vulnerable. And I don't wish anyone death out of this, but
No.
I certainly hope that it's an education for him. But we've also seen that when Boris Johnson got it, it wasn't an education for him, even though he was on a ventilator.
For
And he
like
got
two
up there
weeks.
and he's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, we'll let them have a rally in Trafalgar Square. No big deal. They don't have to wear masks."
Yeah.
So ideology is beating this, but I suspect that what this will do is this will discourage his supporters to a certain extent, and they will start thinking, "Hey, maybe this is real, but the liberals are blowing it up, and Trump will only have a small cold." If that man gets very sick, who knows what will happen?
Yeah,
Now,
the next week is very crucial to determining which path it goes. No, I agree.
there is a chance there could be a President Pelosi here. I mean, we don't know whether Mike Pence says he's not positive, but what if he is? What if both of them get incapacitated at the same time? The Constitution says the Speaker of the House becomes the
And, and poor
President of the United
Biden.
States.
And poor Biden. I mean, the whole family disrespectfully came to the debates, no mask, nothing, in a small hall. And I mean, Biden was like 8 feet away from him. I mean, which is not, but it's an enclosed area with how many. Melania was there infected. Giuliani might still test positive because he was with Trump the past few days preparing for debates.
Right.
We don't even know the fallout from that, and then now with Biden being there, that definitely poses a huge danger. I mean,
It's
it's
true.
incredible. And
You know,
what do you think as far as our elections, if Trump does go on a ventilator, say, or if something, his condition worsens, what happens in that case as far as who is on the ballot? What happens with elections? Like,
this election right now is an aircraft on final landing at an airport. Nothing is going to impact it. The pilot can die, no pilot will land the plane. Same thing, both sides. This election now, the ballot is Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and Mike Pence. That's it. Mark Oldman, the moderator, asked a good question. He said that coronavirus seemed to have made Bolsonaro stronger. I take issue with that. Just because it makes you more of a jerk because you survive it does not mean that you are stronger. It just means you are somehow, in your own machismo, feel that you have beat this thing and the coronavirus is obviously weaker. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump comes out and says that if he has a mild case, that he's the Ubermensch, right? He's Nietzsche's Superman. But I don't think I don't think that Donald Trump, is going to be chastened by surviving this. Not at all.
yeah, and with Bolsonaro, he
Oh, I
definitely
see.
got a boost from, in his poll numbers, but it's a
Right.
complete different system because the resistance in Brazil is nothing compared to United States. I mean, we right now are basically at a crossroads of which way our country goes. And
Very
the
true.
people who made up their mind, they're not gonna, feel pity and say, "Oh, Trump has coronavirus, so I'm gonna go vote for him." I mean, right
Right.
now, this is either we go into a fascist state with authoritarian rule, and basically he's been modeling it after Putin's mafia state, where his inner circle gets the contracts, gets richer, and then everybody else gets sidelined. The media
Yeah.
is under threat, So, I mean, here in this case, I don't think, because the resistance is so strong and so many people are involved, and basically Joe Biden is on the ticket, but what is on the ticket is democracy, because we either go into a mafia state where we're restricted, or we go into, we start repairing our democracy, studying the past 4 years, finding every loophole, and then, fixing it so this could never happen again, and for our children and grandchildren, and. So I don't think, as far as with Bolsonaro, I mean, it is his poll numbers went up slightly, but it wasn't, it's a different system. There's not as much resistance there.
Okay.
All right, Malcolm, this is definitely interesting. Anything else you want to warn America about, since you've done such a great job?
Well, it's funny because we have, I love some of the comments. We have a guy in here who says, "We love you, Trump." Well, you have to determine if you're an American citizen and you're eligible to vote, you have to decide whether you love America. I mean, I'm a Philadelphian. I'm a hardcore originalist Philadelphian. The founding fathers, wrote this system where I lived. I take great inspiration from them. But you know what? I love the Constitution in this country more than I love any one person. And Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution. He is a dictator in waiting. And, this system wasn't designed to have a man like him in charge. Hopefully, when we defeat him in November, we can go back and establish norms. And those norms need to be codified in law now. They can't be norms anymore. And then people need to go to prison, too. The Attorney General manipulating the government. These are things that you need to, manipulating the laws. Then these are things where people need to have a very strict message that you do this, you go to jail.
Speaking that of DOJ and our intelligence agencies, what did you think of Ratcliffe? What he did? I have never. I honestly, I didn't have words.
The way it was worded in the newspaper was wrong. They were saying that it was a report on Russia. Ratcliffe was issuing a Russian intelligence agency generated report. Literally, he was issuing out information from a foreign spy agency that was saying Hillary Clinton engineered the entire Trump-Russia scale.
I couldn't
to go to jail too.
I could not believe it.
Nance Commission on Foreign Intelligence Influence in the next administration, where we root all this out.
Yeah. And the money. Follow the money. I always say everyone's for sale, apparently, in this administration and everyone around him, because every single person involved with Trump, I mean, you take them out separately, every single one has had dealings with oligarchs, with Putin's regime. In Ukraine, they were working for Putin. You name it, and they were, way before even they entered Trump's circle. So absolutely, we definitely, in order to prevent in the future, are going to have to put in some reforms, money laundering reforms, financial reforms, and plug all the holes up. The one good thing I always say, Trump basically exposed every single weakness we have in our system, and now we need to get Joe Biden in, and we need to start fixing it, and have definitely a commission to figure out how we got here, who knew what, when, and start putting together reforms. Yeah, no, absolutely. Malcolm, thank you so much. Any other warnings for America?
No,
Since you predicted everything.
Let's see how the next 72 hours goes.
Yeah. Malcolm, thank you so much for joining me. Malcolm Nance, New York Times bestselling author of The Plot to Betray America: How Team Trump Embraced Our Enemies,